I ended square for 148 North St. Andrews, Dollarhood, Nancy. 81 clear.
I was only 6 months into the job, working graveyard shifts in a quiet rural town where nothing ever happened until it did. That night started like every other, coffee in hand, sitting alone in my cruiser, engine idling near a shut-down gas station. The silence out there could feel suffocating sometimes. Just before 2:30 a.m., my radio crackled. Nothing unusual. Radios glitch all the time out here. But then a voice came through, garbled, static heavy. "This is Unit 6. Need assistance." The thing is, our precinct doesn't have a Unit 6. We never have. And that corps, it wasn't supposed to exist. I remember glancing at the radio, like it had just coughed up a ghost. "Unit 6? I said out loud, eyebrows raised. I reached for the mic and responded. "Dispatch, can you confirm that last call? Unit 6 requesting assistance?" No reply, just more static. I waited a few seconds, then repeated the question. Still nothing. I checked the log. We had no Unit 6. Hell, we only had one station in this town, and I knew every car, every call sign. Maybe it was a bleed-in from another county. Maybe a prank. Or maybe someone out there was using an old radio to get attention. That's when I saw it. Across the street, where I was sure there'd only been overgrown brush and cracked pavement the day before, stood a squat brick building with faded paint. A rusted sign dangled over the door, barely legible, but I could make out just enough. PD 6. My skin prickled. I swear, it hadn't been there yesterday, or last week, or ever. I'd driven this stretch every night since I started. I should have called it in. I should have left. But something about that place pulled at me, like it had been waiting for me all along. I stepped out of the cruiser, leaving the engine running. The air felt heavier, like a thunderstorm was pressing down on the earth. As I approached the building, the scent hit me, musty, damp, and something metallic underneath. The front door was slightly ajar, creaking as the wind nudged it back and forth. I announced myself. "Police, is anyone inside?" No answer, just silence thick enough to choke on. I pushed the door open with my flashlight. The interior looked like something out of an old crime scene photo. Dust blanketed every surface. File cabinets rusted shut, chairs overturned. A cracked portrait of a police chief stared blankly from a wall stained yellow with time. There was no power. The overhead lights were dead, but the hallway ahead glowed faintly, lit by something flickering deeper inside. I followed the glow, past abandoned desks and shattered glass. A door at the end of the hallway stood slightly open, light spilling from underneath. The hairs on my arms lifted. I heard it again, static, whispering through my radio. Then a voice, low and raspy. "David, come in." I froze. No one here knew my first name, not even dispatch. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't introduced myself over the radio. No badge ID, no name, just protocol. That voice knew me. My thumb hovered over the transmit button, but I hesitated. Something told me not to respond. The glow from the cracked door flickered like candlelight. I nudged it open with my foot, flashlight raised, gun holstered but my hand resting on the grip. Inside was a small office, dust-choked peeling paint, a rotting American flag hanging limply in the corner. A single desk sat in the center, and on it, a stack of folders and an old rotary phone, its receiver off the hook. I approached slowly. One folder lay open. Case file none 04. Subject: Officer David Moores. Status: missing. Last seen: October 15th, 1987. Assignment: night shift, Unit 6. The blood drained from my face. There was a photo paperclip to the top of the file. A man in uniform standing by a cruiser. My cruiser. His jawline, eyes, haircut, identical to mine. Not just a resemblance, a copy. I stumbled back, knocking over the chair. The rotary phone suddenly crackled to life. No dialing, no ring, just a voice. "You were supposed to finish the shift, David." But the outside was wrong. I turned and bolted out of the room, my boots echoing against the rotting tile. The hallway seemed longer than before, darker. My flashlight flickered. I reached the lobby and flung the door open. Panic roared in my chest. I grabbed my radio and screamed for backup, for dispatch, for anyone. The road was gone, so was my cruiser. Instead, I faced a black tree line under a dead sky, stars snuffed out like candles. I turned back, no building, just darkness, thick and absolute. Nothing. I stood in the dark, barely able to breathe, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears louder than the static. My radio buzzed again. "Unit 6, status check. Are you still with us?" Then, through the static, "Unit 6, respond. We're still waiting." The voice was calm, too calm, like it had all the time in the world. I turned in a circle, trying to find a landmark, anything, but there was only forest, thick and endless. No wind, no stars, not even the moon, just black trees rising like jagged shadows. The world had folded in on itself, and I was trapped somewhere in the crease. I ran. I don't know for how long. My flashlight flickered out completely, and I dropped it. My breath turned ragged, limbs burning. Eventually, I reached a clearing, and in the center stood the building again, PD6, flickering sign above the door like it had never left. This time, the front door was wide open. Inside, lights were on, fluorescent, buzzing. I stepped in slowly, gun drawn, trembling. Everything was pristine. Clean desks, fresh coffee steaming in mugs. Officers sat at their stations, writing reports, sipping coffee. Familiar faces, too familiar. They all looked like me, every single one of them. Then one of them, myself, stood up from behind the glass at the front desk. His voice matched mine exactly. They didn't turn to stare. They just worked, as if I'd always been part of this place. "You're late, David. The shift never ends if you run." I backed away, but the door behind me slammed shut. My radio screamed in my ear. "Unit 6, confirm status. Begin patrol." Every version of me stood at once, in perfect sync, marching toward me. I turned and ran down a corridor that shouldn't exist. Hallways bent in impossible angles. Doors opened into black voids. I picked one, dove in, and slammed into pavement. I was only 6 months into the job, working graveyard shifts in a quiet rural town where nothing ever happened until it did. That night started like every other, coffee in hand, sitting alone in my cruiser, engine idling near a shut-down gas station. The silence out there could feel suffocating sometimes. Just before 2:30 a.m., my radio crackled. Nothing unusual. Radios glitch all the time out here. But then a voice came through, garbled, static heavy. "This is Unit 6. Need assistance." The thing is, our precinct doesn't have a Unit 6. We never have. And that corps, it wasn't supposed to exist. I remember glancing at the radio, like it had just coughed up a ghost. "Unit 6? I said out loud, eyebrows raised. I reached for the mic and responded. "Dispatch, can you confirm that last call? Unit 6 requesting assistance?" No reply, just more static. I waited a few seconds, then repeated the question. Still nothing. I checked the log. We had no Unit 6. Hell, we only had one station in this town, and I knew every car, every call sign. Maybe it was a bleed-in from another county. Maybe a prank. Or maybe someone out there was using an old radio to get attention. That's when I saw it. Across the street, where I was sure there'd only been overgrown brush and cracked pavement the day before, stood a squat brick building with faded paint. A rusted sign dangled over the door, barely legible. but I could make out just enough. PD6. My skin prickled. I swear, it hadn't been there yesterday, or last week, or ever. I'd driven this stretch every night since I started. I should have called it in. I should have left. But something about that place pulled at me, like it had been waiting for me all along. I stepped out of the cruiser, leaving the engine running. The air felt heavier, like a thunderstorm was pressing down on the earth. As I approached the building, the scent hit me, musty, damp, and something metallic underneath. The front door was slightly ajar, creaking as the wind nudged it back and forth. I announced myself. "Police, is anyone inside?" No answer, just silence thick enough to choke on. I pushed the door open with my flashlight. The interior looked like something out of an old crime scene photo. Dust blanketed every surface. File cabinets rusted shut, chairs overturned. A cracked portrait of a police chief stared blankly from a wall stained yellow with time. There was no power. The overhead lights were dead, but the hallway ahead glowed faintly, lit by something flickering deeper inside. I followed the glow, past abandoned desks and shattered glass. A door at the end of the hallway stood slightly open, light spilling from underneath. The hairs on my arms lifted. I heard it again, static, whispering through my radio. Then a voice, low and raspy. "David, come in." I froze. No one here knew my first name, not even dispatch. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't introduced myself over the radio. No badge ID, no name, just protocol. That voice knew me. My thumb hovered over the transmit button, but I hesitated. Something told me not to respond. The glow from the cracked door flickered like candlelight. I nudged it open with my foot, flashlight raised, gun holstered but my hand resting on the grip. Inside was a small office, dust-choked peeling paint, a rotting American flag hanging limply in the corner. A single desk sat in the center, and on it, a stack of folders and an old rotary phone, its receiver off the hook. I approached slowly. One folder lay open. Case file none 04. Subject: Officer David Moores. Status: missing. Last seen: October 15th, 1987. Assignment: night shift, Unit 6. The blood drained from my face. There was a photo paperclip to the top of the file. A man in uniform standing by a cruiser. My cruiser. His jawline, eyes, haircut, identical to mine. Not just a resemblance, a copy. I stumbled back, knocking over the chair. The rotary phone suddenly crackled to life. No dialing, no ring, just a voice. "You were supposed to finish the shift, David." I turned and bolted out of the room, my boots echoing against the rotting tile. The hallway seemed longer than before, darker. My flashlight flickered. I reached the lobby and flung the door open, but the outside was wrong. The road was gone, so was my cruiser. Instead, I faced a black tree line under a dead sky, stars snuffed out like candles. I turned back, no building, just darkness, thick and absolute. Panic roared in my chest. I grabbed my radio and screamed for backup, for dispatch, for anyone. Nothing. Then, through the static, "Unit 6, status check. Are you still with us?" I stood in the dark, barely able to breathe, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears louder than the static. My radio buzzed again. "Unit 6, respond. We're still waiting." The voice was calm, too calm, like it had all the time in the world. I turned in a circle, trying to find a landmark, anything, but there was only forest, thick and endless. No wind, no stars, not even the moon, just black trees rising like jagged shadows. The world had folded in on itself, and I was trapped somewhere in the crease. I ran. I don't know for how long. My flashlight flickered out completely, and I dropped it. My breath turned ragged, limbs burning. Eventually, I reached a clearing, and in the center stood the building again, PD6, flickering sign above the door like it had never left. This time, the front door was wide open. Inside, lights were on, fluorescent, buzzing. I stepped in slowly, gun drawn, trembling. Everything was pristine. Clean desks, fresh coffee steaming in mugs. Officers sat at their stations, writing reports, sipping coffee. Familiar faces, too familiar. They all looked like me. Every single one of them. They didn't turn to stare. They just worked, as if I'd always been part of this place. Then one of them, myself, stood up from behind the glass at the front desk. His voice matched mine exactly. "You're late, David. The shift never ends if you run." I backed away, but the door behind me slammed shut. My radio screamed in my ear. "Unit 6, confirm status. Begin patrol." Every version of me stood at once, in perfect sync, marching toward me. I turned and ran down a corridor that shouldn't exist. Hallways bent in impossible angles. Doors opened into black voids. I picked one, dove in, and slammed into pavement. I was outside, back near the gas station. My cruiser was there, engine still running. I got in, shaking, trying to convince myself it was over. Then the radio buzzed once more. "Welcome back, Officer Morse. See you tomorrow night." I quit the force the following week, turned in my badge, left town, and never looked back. But no matter where I go, 3:01 a.m. always finds me. My radio, yes, even the ones not plugged in, crackles to life. Sometimes it's just static. Other nights, I hear footsteps or my own voice whispering from the other side.
"I don't sleep much anymore."
I've looked into Officer David Moore's. No public records, no birth certificate, just a faded newspaper clipping buried in an archive. Young cop vanishes without a trace. I know now what happened to him, and I know what's waiting for me if I ever go back. So here's my advice to any rookie cop working the night shift. If a call comes in from a unit that doesn't exist, don't answer. And if you ever see a building that shouldn't be there, keep driving. Some calls were never meant to be answered. I worked the night shift at a rural 911 dispatch center. Quiet place, low call volume. Most nights I hear nothing but the hum of old fluorescent lights and my own thoughts. But last month, something changed. At exactly 2:13 a.m., a line rang that shouldn't have. Line 7. It's been disconnected since 1999 after a fire shut down the old Wood Hollow station. Still, it rang. Out of habit, I answered. A man's voice whispered, terrified, "Someone's knocking from inside the basement." I tried to trace the call. No signal, no address, just one message on screen. Redirected from Station 7. My first instinct was that it had to be a system glitch, maybe some old rerouted line pinging through the servers. It happens sometimes. Dead channels flicker back to life for a second, send static, then vanish. But this wasn't static. This was a full call, a real voice. The man on the other end sounded like he was in his late 20s, breathing heavily, whispering like he was trying not to be heard. I woke up in this house, no idea how I got here. The doors are locked, no windows. I don't know what day it is, and someone's knocking from inside the basement. I asked for his location, phone number, anything to help. Nothing came through. The call ID simply read, "Redirected from Wood Hollow Dispatch, inactive." I froze. That dispatch station burned down over 2 decades ago. Everyone on shift that night was reported dead or missing. Before I could say more, the call dropped. Gone. I reported it. My supervisor chalked it up to a prank or a network loop, but that didn't explain the voice, didn't explain the fear. And it sure as hell didn't explain why Line 7 rang again the next night. At exactly 2:13 a.m., The second call came just like the first. 2:13 a.m. on line 7. This time, it was a woman. Her voice was hoarse, almost frantic, like she'd been crying for hours. "It's not him," she whispered. "It looks like my husband, but it's not him. He died last year. I buried him, but he's standing in the hallway right now, calling my name." I asked for her location, tried to calm her down, told her help was on the way, but there was no data, no signal, just the same message flashing on my screen, redirected from Wood Hollow Dispatch. Then came the sounds. Faint scratching, then a loud metallic dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled across a cement floor. She screamed. The line cut out. I didn't sleep after that. I reviewed both calls, trying to match the voices to any known reports. Nothing. My supervisor stopped taking it seriously, but I couldn't ignore it. Not when line 7 kept ringing, night after night, always at 2:13, always someone new, always pleading. They all said the same thing in different ways. They didn't know where they were, and something was pretending to be someone they loved. By the end of the week, I stopped trying to sleep. I was recording every call, saving them to a hidden folder on my work computer. Something about them felt patterned. I started noticing odd distortions in the background, almost like another voice whispering underneath the caller. I isolated the audio, slowed it down, ran it through cleanup software. It was my name, whispered over and over again. The 6th call broke me. It started normally. Line 7, 2:13 a.m. A man begging for help said he'd been trapped in a house for days, maybe weeks. I began asking questions, but he cut me off. "Don't you remember, David? You said that to me when you were on the line." The hair on my neck stood up. "I've been in here since 1999, since you took my shift." That's when it hit me. 1999 was the year Wood Hollow burned down. But I wasn't even working in dispatch back then. I was 12 years old. How the hell could I have taken someone's shift? I looked at the call log. The caller ID no longer said unknown. It now displayed my full name. David W. Lane, ID, active caller. I nearly dropped the headset. The recording? Gone. Erased as I watched. I opened up the system database to dig deeper. Found a redacted file in the archives. Last update, October 12th. Operator, David W. Lane. My heart stopped. That's me. Same name, same birth date, same face. But I've never worked in Wood Hollow. I wasn't even hired until 2016. Unless I've always worked the night shift. Unless someone or something rewrote how I remember it. Now, every time the phone rings, I feel like it's not just a call for help. It's a handover, and I don't know how many nights I have left before I'm the one making the call. I stopped answering line 7. I told myself I was done, that whatever was happening wasn't my problem anymore. But the phone didn't care. It rang anyway, every night, 2:13 a.m. sharp. And now it didn't stop after one ring. It rang until I picked up, sometimes for hours. I even tried cutting the power. The line still rang. I unplugged the phones. It rang. It started happening outside of work. My cell phone would buzz at 2:13, only to show a missed call from a number that didn't exist. One night, my bedroom landline, one I hadn't used in years, lit up. Line 7 was following me. On the 7th night, I broke. I picked up, hands shaking. The voice that answered wasn't distorted this time. It was clear. It was mine. "I told you," it said calmly. "The night shift never ends. You just forgot." I couldn't breathe. My mind screamed. This wasn't real, but I remembered something. A dream. No, a memory. Flames, smoke, the Wood Hollow dispatch center burning, a door I couldn't open, someone pounding on the other side, Me, screaming to be let out. I'd been there. I died there. Or I was still there. The room around me flickered, lights dimming. The sound of dozens of phones ringing filled the air, layered, chaotic, endless. And then in the center of my living room, a phone materialized, old rotary style, caked in ash. Line 7. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Answer, the voice whispered, now directly behind me. I turned, but there was no one there. Only darkness creeping along the edges of the walls, swallowing everything. In that moment, I understood. The calls weren't cries for help. They were invitations. And every time I answered, I stepped one ring closer to taking his place. Or maybe I already had. I left the job 2 days later. Didn't give notice. Didn't say goodbye. I packed my things, turned off my phone, and drove 6 states west. But it didn't matter. The line still rings, no matter where I go, no matter what I do. 2:13 a.m. Every night. I stopped answering, but sometimes I wake up with the phone in my hand anyway, my own voice whispering on the other end. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. So if you ever work dispatch or any night shift really, remember this. If a call comes in from a line that's not supposed to exist, if the person on the other end sounds a little too familiar, if they mention a station that burned down or a name that sounds like yours, don't answer. Because once you do, you don't hang up. You're transferred. I work the night shift at a small police station tucked deep in the Oregon mountains. Most nights are uneventful, drunks, noise complaints, the occasional holding cell occupant sobering up until morning. But last Friday, something strange happened. Around 1:30 a.m., the motion sensor for cell number 4 lit up on the monitor. I frowned. That cell had been empty all week. I checked the logs. No arrests, no bookings, no one on the roster. And yet, when I pulled up the camera feed, someone was in there, sitting silently on the bench. Only problem was, no one ever put him in. At first, I thought it was a glitch. The station's surveillance system was old. Half the cameras ran on analog, and the software hadn't been updated since before I joined. Still, protocol is protocol. I pulled up the live feed from cell 4. The camera flickered, then stabilized. A man was sitting on the concrete bench, hunched forward, hands in his lap. He wasn't moving. His clothes were torn, filthy like he'd been dragged through the woods. No shoes, no ID badge, just there. I radioed upstairs to the day sergeant, asking if anyone had booked a late-night detainee, and forgot to log it. He told me no one had brought anyone in all evening, and he'd personally locked the cell block before leaving. I checked the intake ledger myself. Blank. Cell 4's key was still sealed in the wall locker. The physical cell should have been locked tight. But I could see the man, right there, breathing. I grabbed my flashlight, took the long corridor down to the holding area, heart knocking in my chest. When I reached cell 4 and looked inside, it was empty. The bench, the walls, the camera, all matched what I saw on the monitor. Except now, there was no one there. Noise on. I stood there for a long time, staring into the empty cell, waiting for something, anything to move. But it was silent. Still, my flashlight beam swept across the walls, the floor, the ceiling. No trace of anyone ever being there. I hurried back to the monitor room, hoping maybe I'd imagined it. But when I replayed the footage, there he was again, the man sitting on the bench like before, head bowed, motionless. Only now, his head slowly tilted upward, and he was staring directly at the camera. I paused the video. My mouth went dry. I zoomed in. His eyes were wide and pitch black, not in a bad lighting way, completely black like wet stones. I checked the feed again. Live. The bench was empty, but the hallway camera now showed the door to cell 4 slightly open. Impossible. The keys were still locked away. There was no way anyone could have opened it, unless they never entered through the door at all. I felt it then, a subtle shift in the air, like pressure dropping before a storm. I locked the holding area remotely and told myself it was a malfunction, just a glitch. But I didn't really believe that. Not anymore. I couldn't shake the image of that man staring into the camera as if he could see me. I tried to rationalize it. A corrupted video loop, a trick of the shadows, maybe a prank. But then I noticed something I hadn't before. On the playback file, the timestamp was wrong. It didn't say 1:30 a.m. It said October 12th, 1997. That wasn't just a glitch. That was nearly 26 years ago, before I was even hired, before the station had digital logs. I dug into the paper archives in the back room, dust choking the air. Took me over an hour, but I found it. One yellowed report. October 12th, 1997, death in custody. Cell number 4. A transient male, no ID, no known address, no arrest paperwork filed. The notes were brief. Subject found unresponsive during shift change. Apparent suicide, cause undetermined. What chilled me wasn't the report. It was the sketch attached to the file. Same clothes, same posture, same black eyes. I backed away from the folder like it might bite. When I returned to the monitor room, the screen was static. I reset the system. One by one, the cameras returned until cell 4 flickered back on. He was there again, but this time, standing, his face nearly pressed against the glass, mouth moving. I turned on the audio feed, just barely a whisper, looping like a chant. Let me out. Let me out. Let me out. The room temperature dropped. My breath fogged. That shouldn't be possible. The station was climate controlled. Then the lights cut out. Not just in the cell block, the entire building. I was alone, in total darkness, with only the whispering still coming through the speaker. Let me out, let me out. I fumbled for my flashlight in the dark, hands slick with sweat. The station was dead silent, except for that one looping whisper from the monitor speaker. Let me out, over and over, calm and patient, like it had all the time in the world. I radioed for backup. Nothing. No static, no failure tone, just silence, as if the frequency had been swallowed whole. The emergency lights kicked in, casting dim red glows through the hallways, like warning signals from another world. I ran toward the holding area, instinct screaming at me to lock it down manually. When I reached the corridor, I stopped cold. Cell 4's door was wide open. There were wet footprints leading out, bare, human, and trailing across the tile toward the end of the hallway. I followed them. They didn't lead to the exit. They circled the hallway. Once, twice, 3 times. Then stopped directly in front of the monitor room door. My door. Except I hadn't seen anyone enter. I hadn't heard a sound. I turned to look behind me and caught my reflection in the glass. Only, it wasn't a reflection. The man from the cell stood where I should have been. Same uniform, same badge, same face, but those eyes were still black, still wrong. His mouth moved, perfectly synced with mine.
Let me out.
And then he smiled. A slow, unnatural smile that felt like it belonged to someone who had waited a very, very long time. I blinked, just once. The monitor room was empty. No reflection, just me, standing alone in front of the glass. But deep down, I felt it. Something had gotten out. Something I didn't let out, but traded places with. Because when I checked the live feed one last time, I saw myself sitting quietly on the bench in cell 4, staring at the camera, waiting for someone else to notice. I quit the force a week later, told them I was burned out, that the night shifts were messing with my head. They didn't ask questions. Maybe they saw something in my eyes. Maybe they didn't want to know. I moved far away, changed numbers, stopped watching anything with surveillance footage. But still, sometimes, when I pass a mirror late at night, I swear the man looking back isn't me. And every now and then, I dream of cell 4, of cold concrete, humming fluorescent lights, and the feeling that I'm not alone. So here's my advice. If you ever work the night shift at a quiet little station with old cameras and older secrets, if a cell is marked empty, but you see someone inside, don't check it. Don't rewind the tape. Don't listen to the whispers, because that cell doesn't want to stay empty. It wants to be filled.
I've always hated basements. Even as a kid, I'd sprint up the stairs like something was chasing me the moment I turned off the light. Now I'm 22, living alone in my parents' old house after they moved to Florida. It's quiet, affordable, and honestly a bit too empty. I told myself I was too old to be scared of a basement. That was before the lights started flickering, before I heard scratching noises from below, and before the basement door creaked open by itself at 3 in the morning. That was the night I stopped sleeping with the lights off. It started on a Tuesday night. I was watching something mindless on Netflix when the lights suddenly flickered and cut out completely. At first, I thought it was a blackout, until I realized the power was still on in the other houses down the street. I sighed, grabbed my phone for the flashlight and made my way to the basement to check the circuit breaker. The stairs creaked with every step. The wood warped and loud like it hadn't been touched in years. The smell hit me halfway down, a mix of mold, old wood and something else. Something sour and raw like meat left out too long. I ignored it and flipped the breaker. The lights came back on. As I turned to go back upstairs, I froze. There was a sound behind me, a faint scratching, slow, deliberate, coming from the far end of the basement. I shined my light toward the noise, heart pounding, but saw only dusty boxes and old furniture under a sheet. No movement, no sign of life. I laughed nervously, shook my head and went upstairs, locking the basement door behind me. I told myself it was just mice, but deep down, I knew something else had moved when I wasn't looking. Over the next few nights, the basement door became unpredictable. I'd go to bed with it locked, only to find it cracked open in the morning. The first time, I blamed myself. Maybe I hadn't latched it right. The second time, I started feeling nervous. By the third, I knew something was wrong. One night, I woke up at 3:17 a.m., not to a sound, but to silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I crept out of bed and found the basement door hanging wide open. I stood at the top of the stairs, heart pounding. I didn't hear anything at first, until I did. A slow, dragging sound, like someone pulling their nails across concrete. The next night, I set my phone to record and left it facing the door. When I listened to the recording the next morning, I heard footsteps, soft, heavy, ascending the stairs, and then a whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. "Come in." That was it for me. I called the police. They searched the basement, checked the windows. No forced entry. No sign of anyone down there. They said it was probably just a draft or an animal. But I knew better. Something was waiting in the dark. It happened 3 nights later. I was lying in bed, wide awake, too afraid to sleep. I'd shoved a chair under the basement door handle and pushed the couch up against it, just in case. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, but then I heard it. Bang, bang, bang. The door shook violently. The entire frame rattled like someone was slamming into it with their full weight. I jumped out of bed, grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the dresser and crept toward the hallway. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to see it. But when I turned the corner, I saw the basement door bucking against the pressure, like someone was trying to break through. And then I heard it. A voice, low, guttural and furious. Open the door. Let me out. Not, let me in. Let me out. I stood frozen, bat trembling in my hands as the pounding stopped abruptly. Silence fell like a weighted blanket. I waited. Nothing. No footsteps. No retreat. Just stillness. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I pushed the couch back and opened the door slowly, bat in hand. The staircase was empty, but the smell hit me again, worse than before. And this time, there were scratches on the inside of the door, long and deep, etched into the wood. That's when I knew. Whatever was down there wasn't trying to get in. It was trying to escape. I couldn't take it anymore. The whispers, the pounding, the dreams where something cold pressed against my chest. I needed answers. That morning, I visited my neighbour, Mr. Delaney, a retired carpenter who had lived next door since before I was born. When I asked if anything strange had ever happened in the house, he went quiet. "You haven't opened the old cabinet in the basement, have you?" he asked. I blinked. "What cabinet?" His eyes narrowed. "Behind the top, far wall, left corner. We nailed it shut years ago. The last guy who lived there didn't make it." He wouldn't say more. That night, I went down there. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that it was all in my head. I moved the boxes, pulled back the tarp and found it. A warped wooden door, chest height, nailed shut with rusted iron spikes in an X pattern. As I stood there staring, something knocked from the other side. Not loud, just once, then twice, then 3 times. I stepped closer, heart thudding until I could hear breathing behind the wood. And then, a voice. "I remember you." My legs almost gave out. It was a whisper, wet, broken, but familiar, like it had followed me my whole life. The door shuddered violently, boards bending outward like they were about to split. I backed away, dropped the flashlight and sprinted up the stairs, slamming the main door shut behind me. I didn't hesitate this time. I called a contractor the next morning and paid him to seal the basement shut permanently. Concrete, bricks, steel bar. I don't care. I just know. Whatever's down there, it's still knocking. And it remembers my name. It's been 3 weeks since I sealed the basement. I don't go near that part of the house anymore. Sometimes at night, I still hear faint knocks beneath the floorboards. Slow, rhythmic, like it's keeping time. Other times I wake up to whispers I can't quite understand, like someone murmuring through a wall. But I don't go down there. I never will. I've started sleeping with music on, just to drown it out. I even thought about moving, but deep down, I'm afraid it'll follow me. If you ever move into an old house and there's a locked door you're not supposed to open, Don't. If there's something sealed behind nails and wood, leave it there. Because whatever lives in the dark, whatever waits behind the walls, wants you to let it out. And once you do, it might remember you too. I never used to be afraid of mirrors, but that changed the day I saw my reflection smile when I didn't. It happened in the basement of my late aunt's house, the place I moved into after she passed. There was this huge antique mirror down there, the kind with a thick carved frame and glass that looked almost too clear. At first I thought it was just old and quirky, but then I noticed something strange. My reflection would blink a second too late, or tilt its head slightly when I stood still. That's when I realized something was watching me. The mirror was already there when I moved in, leaning against the far wall of the basement, half covered by a dusty tarp. It must have been old. The frame was thick and ornate, carved with twisting floral designs, and the glass had that slightly wavy look that only antique mirrors seem to have. I didn't think much of it at first. It felt like a relic from another era, maybe something my aunt couldn't bear to throw away. The basement itself was cold, always a few degrees cooler than the rest of the house, with a faint, musty smell that never went away. I didn't spend much time down there, just occasional trips to grab tools or boxes. The first time I noticed something odd, I had gone downstairs to reset the breaker. As I passed the mirror, I caught my reflection out of the corner of my eye. Only it didn't move quite right. It was subtle. My arm lagged a moment behind. I told myself it was a trick of the light or my tired brain playing games. But as the days went on, the delays became more obvious. My reflection started reacting wrong, too slow or worse, too fast, like it was anticipating me. I started testing it, standing in front of the mirror, making sudden movements to catch it off guard. At first, the reflection stayed synced, but then, one night, I blinked, and my reflection didn't. It just stared at me, wide-eyed, unblinking for a full second before copying the motion. I stumbled back, heart pounding, trying to rationalize it, but some part of me already knew. This wasn't just a mirror. I set up my phone to record overnight, facing the mirror. The next morning I watched the footage. For the first few minutes nothing happened, just an empty basement. But then, at around 2:47 a.m, something moved. A shadow passed across the surface of the glass, though no one was in the room. And then I saw myself walk into frame. But I never went into the basement. The video showed me standing in front of the mirror, perfectly still for over 5 minutes. Then the reflection raised its hand and waved. The version of me just stared. Then both vanished as the camera glitched. I deleted the video thinking maybe I was losing my mind. But that night I heard tapping, soft, deliberate, coming from beneath the floorboards, right where the mirror stood. I tried to ignore it. I really did. I avoided the basement, kept the door locked, slept with a white noise machine blasting so I wouldn't hear the tapping. But the sound kept coming, always at the same time. 2:47 a.m. 3 soft taps, then silence, then 3 more, like a pattern, like a message. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a flashlight and headed downstairs. The air felt colder than usual, heavy, like I was walking through water. When I turned the corner, I nearly dropped the light. The mirror was uncovered. I know I had left the tarp over it. It stood there, tall and waiting, like it had been expecting me. I stepped closer, and that's when I noticed something worse. My reflection wasn't alone. There was a second figure standing just behind me in the glass, a pale, distorted version of myself, its eyes black and sunken, grinning from ear to ear. I spun around. Nothing. I looked back at the mirror. Now just me, alone. I should have left right then. But instead I reached out and touched the glass. It was ice cold, and it pulled. Only for a second, but I felt it, like something had gripped my hand and tried to tug me inside. I yanked myself back, heart racing, stumbling into the shelf behind me. That was the first time I heard it speak. A whisper, soft but clear, echoed from the glass. "You don't belong out there." I ran. I slammed the basement door shut and shoved a chair under the handle, but I could still feel its eyes on me, even through the walls. And worse, I wasn't sure my reflection was still mine. I decided to get rid of it. First thing in the morning, I called a local junk removal service and asked if they could haul away an antique mirror from my basement. The guy on the line paused, then said, "We don't deal with mirrors." That was it, no explanation. Just a firm no. So I called a second company. Same response. Frustrated, I tried to move the mirror myself. I wore gloves, avoided looking into it. But the moment I touched the frame, something shifted. The air around me got heavy. The basement lights flickered, and then I heard it again, right behind the glass. "Let me take your place." I froze. Then the reflection began to move on its own, not mimicking, acting independently. It stepped forward in the glass, pressing its hand to the inside as if testing the surface. Then it smiled, wider than any human mouth should stretch. I staggered back, but it was too late. A crack formed across the mirror, thin, delicate. A sound followed like ice under pressure as more fractures spread. From the other side, I saw the reflection press harder, both palms flat now, pushing. I ran up the stairs and grabbed a hammer. I didn't think, I just acted. I came back down and smashed the mirror. Glass exploded across the floor, cutting into my hands and arms. The reflection, the thing screamed, a high, unnatural pitch that rattled the shelves. Then silence. I fell back, breathing hard, staring at the jagged remains. But in the largest shard, still stuck in the frame, I saw something impossible. Not my face, not anymore. Just the mirror, still whole, still watching. And in it, something waiting to put the pieces back together. It's been a month since I shattered the mirror. I swept up the pieces, sealed them in a metal box, and buried it behind the garage. But some nights, always around 2:47, I hear faint scratching beneath the floorboards again, like glass grinding against glass. I don't own mirrors anymore, not in the bathroom, not in my bedroom. I brush my teeth using the reflection in the microwave. It sounds paranoid, I know, but I've seen what can happen when something on the other side decides it wants out. If you ever find an old mirror in a basement, especially one that seems too clean, too still, don't touch it. Don't look too long. And whatever you do, don't let it learn your face. Because once it does, it might not give it back. And when your reflection starts acting without you, that means it's almost ready. When I moved into the rental house, everything seemed normal, modest, quiet, and well kept for its age. The blueprint said it had a small basement, mostly for utilities and storage. Nothing unusual. But on my third night there, I was woken at exactly 2:14 a.m. by 3 slow, distinct knocks from beneath the floorboards, right under my bed. I froze, listening. The knocks came again, spaced evenly like a pattern. I checked the basement the next morning. It was empty, except for one strange thing, a faint outline on the wall, like a door had once been there, but was sealed shut. The basement was exactly what you'd expect. Concrete floor, exposed pipes, a rusted water heater humming in the corner. But what caught my eye was the far wall. Near the back, behind a stack of old paint cans, I noticed something odd. A faint, rectangular outline, barely visible beneath layers of faded paint and plaster. It was the size and shape of a door. No handle, no hinges, just an outline. At first, I dismissed it as an old patch job. Maybe the previous owner sealed off a crawl space or built a new wall over something. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just cosmetic. The concrete there sounded hollow when I tapped it. Still, I told myself not to overthink it. I went back upstairs and tried to forget about it. But that night, right at 2:14 a.m., I was woken by 3 knocks, slow, deliberate, rising from the floor beneath me. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The next morning, I went online and downloaded the full architectural blueprint of the house. The basement was supposed to be a single open space. No side rooms, no additional walls, no sealed doors. So, what the hell was I hearing? Over the next few nights, the knocks continued, always at exactly 2:14 a.m. Always 3 of them, evenly spaced. I tried ignoring it. I even moved my bed to the living room upstairs, but somehow the sound followed. Whether I was on the couch, in the kitchen, or half asleep in the shower, I'd still hear it. Faint, like it was coming from deep inside the walls. I finally set up a phone to record audio overnight. The next morning I listened. At first just ambient house noise, but then, at the timestamp, 3 slow knocks. And after a long pause, something else. A whisper. Too quiet to catch fully, but unmistakably human. I replayed it at full volume with headphones. One phrase stood out. "Don't cover the door again." I felt sick. I asked a contractor friend to bring his thermal camera. He scanned the basement wall. His face went pale. "There's a hollow void behind this, about 3 meters wide." He stepped back. "But there's no entry point, no ventilation. It's like they built a room and sealed it shut." I asked him if he'd help me open it. He looked at me and shook his head. "No chance. Something's in there, man, and it doesn't want out. I should have left it alone." But I couldn't stop thinking about that hidden space behind the wall, the sealed-off room that didn't belong. I became obsessed. I barely slept. I stopped going to work. I spent hours in the basement, staring at that faint outline in the concrete, pressing my ear to the cold surface, hoping and dreading to hear something. Eventually, I bought a hammer and chisel. Just to see what was under the paint, I told myself. But the first strike revealed something shocking. Brick, not poured concrete, older than the rest of the foundation. And the more I chipped away, the more I realized this wall wasn't part of the original house. I worked for hours. When I finally pulled away enough bricks to reveal a small opening, I stopped. The air that poured out was cold and damp, carrying a smell like rotting soil and rusted metal. Inside, I saw only darkness. I raised my flashlight, hand trembling, and aimed it through the hole. The beam landed on a chair, positioned directly in the center of a tiny room. On it sat something, a shape slumped forward, unmoving, covered in a tarp or cloth, and then it shifted. Not much, just a twitch, a slight roll of the shoulder. I stumbled back, heart pounding, nearly tripping over the tools. As I scrambled to seal the opening with whatever I could, I heard a sound I'll never forget. Breathing. Wet, rattling breathing just inches from the hole I had made. And a voice, barely louder than a breath. Now you know where I am. I blocked the hole, pushed shelves against it, covered it with plaster, but I know it's still there. And it knows me. I spent the next 2 days trying to pretend everything was normal. I avoided the basement. I ignored the knocking. I left every light on in the house, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I saw, or what I almost saw. The third night I woke up at 2:14 a.m. sharp. Not to knocking this time, but to scraping. A long, deliberate drag of something sharp against the basement wall. I lay frozen in bed until I heard it, footsteps. Not mine, not above, below. Moving slowly, pacing. That was it. I wasn't going to be trapped by this thing in my own home. I grabbed a sledgehammer and headed downstairs. I was shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The basement was pitch black. The overhead light flickered once and died. When I reached the patched over wall, the plaster was already cracked, from the inside, as if something had been pushing. I didn't wait. I started swinging, breaking through brick and cement until I saw the hole again. The chair was still there, but now it was empty. Before I could react, I felt a cold breath against my neck, and a voice. You let me out. I turned, swinging the hammer wildly at nothing. Just air, silence. I ran, sealed the basement door, bolted it shut. The knocking hasn't returned, neither has the scraping. But now, when I pass by mirrors or dark windows, sometimes I see a shape behind me. Just for a second, still, watching. And once, just once, I woke up to find the basement door wide open, the floor leading down, wet with footprints, bare, human footprints, leading into the kitchen. I'm not sure what I freed, but it's no longer down there. It's in here. I've since moved, left everything behind. But no matter where I go, I still hear it, sometimes in my dreams, sometimes in the walls. Just 3 knocks, always at 2:14 a.m. If you ever move into an old house and find a sealed doorway in the basement, don't open it. Don't poke, don't investigate, don't even acknowledge it. Because the moment you disturb what's been buried, it knows you. And it doesn't stay where it was. Some doors are sealed for a reason. If you ever find one, do yourself a favor, leave it closed. You won't like what comes through.